Welcome to another school podcast. Today we are in Loughborough at Access Education HQ. And today we're doing something we've never done on the podcast before. We've got 3 guests. I mean, it's normally 1-to-1, but you know, we're not going to do 1-to-2, we're going to do 1-to-3. So, this is pretty new to me, and today what I really want to do is dive into what you guys do at Access Education, but also where you guys are taking things in education, because you guys are doing unbelievable stuff, things that, you know, I'm not even kind of in tune with. So I'm really looking forward to, I guess, educating myself on it, especially for myself, but also teachers, head teachers, CEOs, and everybody who really works in education. So I'm going to ask some really silly questions, but if you can just dive into any of the points, that would be greatly appreciated. But before I begin, I want you all to introduce yourself, what you do at Access Education, and how you got here. I'll start with you.
Yeah, hi, nice to meet you, Cameron. Thanks for having us. So Laura Tressler, I'm Director of Client Management and Sales here at Access Education. What that means is that my team and myself look after all of the schools right across the UK, regardless as to whether they sit within a local authority in a maintained sector or into a multi-academy trust, and we engage with them either to account manage and make sure they're using our products effectively, or to engage with them to see how we can help them problem solve and take Access products in the future. So yeah, big remit right across the UK. Our team is structured regionally, so we get the most out of each of those regions. So for instance, in the Northwest, there'll be a specific account manager that looks after that region, and then we can use the referral program a lot of the time as well to share the case studies.
Okay, Simon.
Yes, my name's Simon. I am the Managing Director of Access Education. Access is quite a large software company, and we're split into various different groups. One of those is education. It's a really important part of our business. As Managing Director, I'm running that part of Access. The way a software company works is we have a number of different functions within the company. So we have sales, Laura's the sales director, we have marketing, we have customer success, which is looking after the customers who've recently acquired software from us, helping put it in, and then supporting them getting the value of our software after that. And then we have product, who design, and that's Emma's team, she'll introduce herself, but product who design our products and plan the investment that we're making into our products over time, and then engineering, which is software coding. Yeah. So we have those groups of people, and then as well we have finance and HR, and so I'm managing those different teams.
How big is the team?
Yeah, so Access Education has it's about 300 people, just a bit more than 300 people. We also have teams of people who are covering the non-profit sector, charity software, but the majority of what we do is Access Education. And so my responsibility is to deliver growth in our business. I've been in the technology world for about 20 years, in management roles in software companies for about 15 years of that. The key thing for us to grow our business is that we're delivering fantastic software for our customers that really brings value to their organizations. And then, you know, if that's successful and we support those customers really well, that's a virtuous circle. And then we continue to grow. So whilst our measure is growth in our business, that can only happen if we're delivering fantastic software to our customers, which we aspire to do.
Amazing. Emma.
Hi, so thank you for having us. My name's Emma Slater. So I've come to Access in a bit of a different way. My title is Head of Learning, and that encompasses me wearing many different hats. So like Simon said, I work with a fantastic product and engineering team to really think about how we are mapping our products and how they work together. But actually part of my role is also thinking about learning, and that's because my background is actually as a teacher. So I started off in teaching, went into being in senior leadership within education, went on to do school improvement, and through a change of circumstance and a move up north, I ended up actually in software. And so what I see as part of my role is really making sure everything we do is about our customer and the impact we can have on the learning that happens in schools and the teachers in schools.
And you know that firsthand because you were a teacher?
Yeah, well, yes, I suppose that helps me to be able to have real input into what we're doing here, but also my network. I'm really lucky that I have a fantastic network that I can also draw on.
Okay, so quickly, Simon, you mentioned you've been in tech for a long time. How long have you been involved with education? Is this something new? And if so, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced kind of learning the educational market, I guess?
So I've been involved in education for about 5 years.
Okay.
Before that, other types of software. including financial services, as an example. Education,
which is a big part of schools, isn't it? I think people just think teaching, but they don't understand. If you're a head teacher or a CEO, you're not just teaching, are you, or looking after staff? There's the money you have to handle, parents, and everything.
That's exactly right. And actually, a bunch of the software that we provide to schools in the UK is how to run the organisations efficiently. So it's people-related things like HR and payroll, financial accounting. So whilst it's for schools and designed for schools, it's not actually educating children, although we do have that. But in terms of the learning, it's just one personal perspective. In previous industry sectors that I was in, like financial services, essentially our software was making those businesses better, which is great from a business perspective. Good technology helping those businesses essentially make more profit by being more efficient. One of the big changes for me, which is really motivating for me, is that our role in providing education software is to help our schools customers and schools organisation customers make their budgets go further by helping them become more efficient on the running of their organisations. And so actually that releases budget for them to spend on education children. So our purpose in Access Education is helping educational outcomes, or schools improve educational outcomes, which I find very motivating, particularly compared to other sectors of software, which is about helping the customers in those businesses. I think the one difference in education compared to other business sectors is budget constraints. So businesses that make profit, they're constantly reinvesting, trying to grow, they have money to invest. Clearly, we appreciate on a daily basis how challenged budgets are for our schools customers. And that's a real constraint. But I think it sharpens our focus on really trying to make software that helps them, helping that money go further. And then the other side of it, as I said, is the kind of focus on the educational outcomes of the children,
which is the most
important.
Yeah,
thing.
of course.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Laura, quickly touching on what Simon said. There's an argument that sometimes education in the UK is stagnant, it doesn't move, it's outdated, but then also it's moving at a rapid pace. And obviously there's so many other elements you have to move with, the budgeting, the staffing. How do you keep on top of it so Access Education doesn't get outdated?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, so the first thing is we need to be really in tune with the sector, and our customers give us the ability to be really in tune with the sector. So it's talking to them on a very regular basis, daily, involving like even parties like yourselves, just getting the outside influence. But then we have the experts of those brilliant, innovative software engineers that sit in-house. So when you combine the two, you combine in excellence in software engineering and innovation and tools like AI, how do we use this? And then you then collaborate with the sector and say, how do we use this to actually solve your problems? And that's regardless as to any technology or any partnership that anybody in the education sector goes into work with a supplier on, needs to be fundamentally at the heart of it, that it's there to do something different, to solve the challenge, to solve the problem that the school has, rather than just a nice bit of kit that we kind of throw out into the schools and ask the teachers or back office admin staff to kind of adopt. So.
Yeah, I think that there is a risk of exactly that, which is we as technologists can see technology, see the way things are moving and think, oh, we could design something fantastic for schools, but if we haven't talked to schools,
but does it work?
Exactly.
Yeah, is it relevant? Is it actually valuable for them or not? There's that real risk. So it's that two-way flow. We bring the technology expertise, as Laura said, but we work closely with our schools customers to get the insight into actually what
So you've got the customers, you've got the technology, you've got the software. Obviously, Emma, you're head of learning. What does that actually mean? Like, to me, I would say, obviously, there's a curriculum which you do and stuff. Is that what you're responsible for? Is it more than that? Is it?
So I think it encompasses parts of that, but then more than that. So at its heart and at its very best, it's working with our customers to support them in auditing what's going to work for them. So to Simon and Laura's point, you have some schools, and they might be schools who are relatively affluent for whatever reason, and they will go out and buy many products.
Got you.
And try and solve multiple situations and multiple issues in their school with many products. We spoke to one primary school that had 25 individual products, and that was just in the curriculum space. So that's not even considering the operational products such as budget management. And some of those products did the same job, but they weren't fully utilising everything one individual product could do. They were using little bits of every single product. And, you know, I see it absolutely as fundamental to our set of values as Access Education, is to work with customers to support them around that.
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
I was caught off guard with a bit of a closed mindset, probably because of where I work. I work mainly in secondary schools, mainly in the UK, sometimes overseas. What schools and colleges, or who do you actually work with? I think that is a good start. You said primary. I said, oh,
Yep.
they work with primary. So just because my next question after that is kind of, wow, the challenges from even primary to secondary
Yep.
to maybe private schools to maybe international schools,
Yep.
it's completely different, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
It is. So, I mean, we work with everyone. So we have virtual schools. We work with them.
What's a virtual school?
So a virtual school it doesn't necessarily have a school building. It
Okay.
will work with looked after children in a local education authority normally.
Done
so
online?
they will have,
Yeah, all online.
yep, online. They do some in-person stuff, but they will have a dispersed group of young people that they are responsible for supporting. So that child...
Alternative provision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the child will sit in a school, but they will also be
Got you.
supported through their virtual
Understand.
schools. So we work with virtual schools, we work with international schools, we work with the very biggest trusts, and we also work with small, you know, one-off primary schools and independent schools. So
And local authorities.
and local education authorities. So our remit isn't boundaried in that respect. So we are able to support and provide software solutions for, you know, really any makeup of school.
To your point on the challenges are different, right? So when we talk to a secondary, quite often we're talking more about GCSE attainment, Progress 8 reports, and how all of that kind of flows up and how we can help them to get better results from some of their teacher recruitment. Retention, secondary, also a really big challenge. Quite often in primaries, we're quite back to some of the basics of digital transformation, just in getting them away from an Excel spreadsheet, that they could be doing something that they don't need to write this down and pass a piece of paper around.
Even in my daughter's primary school,
Yeah.
it's a village school. There's
Yeah.
100 students in the
You
school.
still get a newsletter.
Yeah, we still get the newsletter. Yeah, so I guess a lot of that is very outdated.
Yeah.
So a lot of the question, like, it all kind of comes down to impact, right? And I guess when there's so many moving parts, Simon, how do you ensure Access Education are delivering impact? Just hearing you guys talk, I'm actually blown away really by how in tune you are with education. No offense, didn't expect that. But how do you keep that at the forefront of the business so you keep moving forward? Yes, you've got to grow a business, but also if the product's rubbish and it's not put in schools and education and pupils first, it won't last very long. So how do you do that and manage that?
Well, part of it comes back to that feedback loop from schools. So our product team, they're designing the product, you know, and they're thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead about what we can be doing in our product to keep it, you know, current or ahead of what schools need. And as what we bring to that is the technology understanding, but then we get a lot of feedback from schools, and that requires continuous investment. And then our software engineers who do the coding, write the software, are then putting that as enhancements into the products. So for
Amazing.
us, it's a never-ending journey of continuing to evolve our products as the needs of customers change. And as
Sounds
technology,
exhausting.
well,
Sounds
it is, and you know, and also we're sort of thinking of our competitors because there are other people doing similar things to us. And we're trying to kind of do better than them. But the whole point is continuing to add value in them. And you know, we may come onto artificial intelligence. That again, that's just a continual journey.
So where
as those
does
sorts of technologies develop?
AI come into all of this? When you're talking about streamlining it and building amazing things, how will AI impact education, say within the next 5 to 10 years? And actually, can one of you explain what does that question even mean?
Yeah.
Because I see AI as, you know, what you type in online, ChatGPT or whatever it is, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So for the person like myself or somebody listening, is AI really a thing? Is it as powerful as what it's portrayed to be in the future? Yeah, tell me more.
I mean, let's
There's many questions there.
I think the first thing though is it's a really dangerous question to ask. Like, where will it see us? Where will we be in 5 to 10
Dangerous.
years' time?
Cut it, Dave. All right, edit.
But the reason why it's dangerous is because I don't think anybody actually knows right now. So you hear a lot of talk about AI going, will it replace the need for teachers? Will it replace the need for salespeople, like, who knows is the answer. Right now we're in complete exploratory stages to say what could this look like in the future. So I think asking exactly where it's going to be is too difficult, but I do think there's a role to play in everybody, I call it dabbling, using it, like embracing it and learning where all the pros, the cons, the kind of pitfalls, the good, the bad, the ugly is going to come from, so that we can actually answer those questions. Because we see, and Emma will touch on this more in a minute, but we see some schools have gone into it with fear. I'm going to ban it. I'm not going to let use of it. Others have probably over-embraced it, ended up with 25 different tools and don't quite know how to actually use them and hone them. But actually, there's a real strategy you could plan that would really embrace AI, I think, in more detail. And that's even before I've even given you a definition of AI, which Emma will do much better.
So I think so AI has obviously been around for a really long time. You know, if you've ever studied maths at university, etc., you'll have a sense of artificial intelligence and what it could do. And it, I think when we talk about it now across all the different industries and with the launch of ChatGPT and Copilot, what we're talking about is generative AI. So that's sort of exactly what it says on the tin. It's about generating. So it's taking what has come before. It's not doing anything new, but it's creating something new from what has come before. So whether that's a piece of music, whether that's a picture, whether that's written content, it is scanning and reading at speed to use its information to then draw together what you're asking it to do. So I think it's really interesting when we talk, and I agree with Laura, there's the sense of what it will be is a really hard one to answer. You know, I think about when I was at university many, many moons ago, having a housemate who was doing a pure maths degree and started trying to tell us that on our flip phones, which we'd all just got for the first time, because it was 1998, and on them, that actually in the future, we would be able to take pictures and we would be able, all we could do was phone at that point in time, but we'd be able to type things. And it seemed unreal. It just didn't. And now, you know, you have in your pocket a constant television, films, anything you want at your fingertips. And that's moved at such speed. And I think AI and generative AI will be, there'll be pioneers in the education world who will absolutely embrace it. And obviously Access Education wants to be a part of that. And schools themselves will adopt and adapt at different rates, just the way they have with other technologies, you know, how engaged they want to be with technology. But ultimately, in the future, I think we'll look back at this and think, can you remember when you had to write an email from scratch? Yeah.
And I would say it's not that people have no idea how AI is going to impact education. What's clear is it's already beginning to. That is only going to ramp up in terms of the speed of that, and it's going to transform education. So some examples of that. So what we think about a lot is the ability of using AI to, in the end, deliver personalized learning platforms for individual students without the teachers having to do a massive amount of work to do that for each pupil. That will deliver better outcomes for the pupils and better outcomes for the teachers, in the sense that the teachers will have that use AI to actually deliver that and not have to do all of the work around it. But I think, you know, AI is going to you know, have huge impacts, I suppose, in terms of making learning more accessible. So if there are regions in the UK or, you know, globally with less access to quality teaching, less access to materials and so on, AI will really improve, you know, with quite limited resources, the ability or the standard of education in those areas. And that goes into professional development as well in terms of lifelong learning. So an absolutely huge effect. So for us as a company, we're looking at, I suppose, two main strands really. One is using AI within our software to actually enhance the efficiency that our software is bringing to schools' organisations in terms of the administration of them. So it really accelerates the ability to understand what's happening in their organisation and then make changes and run themselves efficiently. For teachers, actually taking away a lot of the I suppose, admin work around teaching that is time consuming. So it's reducing their workload and allowing them to actually then spend more time on the actual teaching. And then I think the third thing is then the individualized learning platforms and really making those tailored to individual students. So it's going to be hugely beneficial. It's going to transform education. It's beginning to. And I think where we sit, we're optimists about it, but I think Laura already articulated there's lots of fear and concern about where AI might go and what the impact might be in education, which we're addressing.
Some of that is partly due to, and because we've jumped into AI, we're there, right, as a company, that's where we're developing, that's where we are. But there's a lot in the education sector that are still going through digital transformation in its simplest form. So actually this is quite big and this is quite scary, because we haven't yet got to a point where we're even embracing collaboration tools right across the trust, or actually even using getting rid of the Excel spreadsheet and kind of moving on to something else. So there's a step in AI, and schools need to first get through the digital transformation, maximize the effects of just using more digital tools, getting over the digital divide, solving some of the problems it has, and then enhancing it as AI comes next. And I think too many, this is the buzzword at the minute, and they've gone straight to the AI actually before they've assessed exactly what is being used right across the school and the trust at a digital level.
And another thing, sort of building on that, you talked about, you log on to ChatGPT. That's lots of people's experience of using AI.
Yeah. Exactly.
For us, we provide software to schools, whether it's a learning platform for Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, or it's administration software for schools. It's actually using AI within those, and that's what we will put into those. That will then really drive the benefits. It's not separately going to use an AI tool, it's actually within the day-to-day software and learning platforms that schools use. And our challenge is to make that as simple and as easy for our customers, users within schools to use.
Making that real for you, right? So if I take a process today, which because of the workforce challenges that schools have, absence management. So today, some teacher calls in, typically calls still, firstly, is the first bit where we could do some transformation. Secondly, calls in, somebody then has to input that absence onto a HR system.
Wait. Stop. So you would look at everything?
You look at everything from top to bottom.
So what's wrong with a phone call?
Because the phone call then triggers an activity that somebody then has to physically input into one system.
Okay.
Typically, because of the way schools are set up, the HR system is not the only place that has to be inputted. So it then has to go onto the MIS. So now there's 15 minutes typically on the first one, maybe 10 on the second one. And then you have to then go and find your agency staff.
You've got to work out which classes won't be taught,
which
because the teacher's
class,
off.
how am I going to shift this around? All of that is probably over an hour's work on just one teacher calling in absent. You then multiply that across the trust and the number of absence days they get. We've got a huge inefficiency in the whole cycle of something that happens on a very regular basis. So first bit is digital transformation. How do you make sure that you get integration between the platforms? So the phone call triggers the input into the HR system. The HR then reads straight to the MIS system, right, straight to the MIS system. And then the clever bit, once you embrace AI and you get into an automation, how do I then post that onto several agencies' websites or whatever you choose to find me the supply teacher that's within a 20-mile radius, and then I redo the whole rota or timetabling.
And if you
That's where it gets clever.
If you think of that, like you'll have deputy heads listening to this podcast who will spend on a morning, usually on a Monday morning, having multiple teachers phoning in, especially if you're in a really big secondary with, say, like 2,000 students, you've got masses of staff, and you're spending your morning, usually from about 7 o'clock in the morning until school starts, just dealing with that. And actually, that's not a good use of a head teacher, of a deputy head teacher's time.
I've even had situations in school when I may have a workshop before break and then meeting the same students after break, and then a student's been absolutely phenomenal. Then they come in after break, angry, nearly swearing. I'm like, what's gone on? What's changed? What's happened? They said, I've just spoke to my dad on the phone. He's shouting at me because they say I'm not in school, but I'm in school. I've been in your lesson, but I've not been in that lesson. So now they've kind of lost me, and he's had a phone call home saying that you're not in school, but I'm in school. Yeah. If that kind of that's happened quite often, to be fair, where they're like, I'm literally in school now, I'm here. But because there's certain, but then there's safeguarding, and then it falls into all these different elements.
You think of all the activity involved in that phone call being made.
Exactly. saying, "Oh, John's not in today," and so, well,
But I
John,
think-
he should be in.
So I would flip that the other way with students, and I would say what AI will support in doing is looking at patterns over
Yeah.
time. So if a student is regularly absent, they are not hitting certain metrics that you would expect them to hit, and that could be anything from handing in homework to, you know, are they having their dinner? Are they, and that's the school dinner, are they, you know, attending class on time, so they're getting there? All of the different metrics we look at with regards to a single individual child's behaviour pattern, and start to make predictions from that from a much younger age. So thinking over time, if students start to have regular absence by year 5, how do they perform at GCSE?
Got you.
You
So
know,
progress and
what's
stuff
that
like
kind
that.
of, yeah, so that you can intervene earlier. It also would work with things like, you know, safeguarding, starting to, again, look at patterns over time so that you're not relying on written records or records that sit in multiple disparate spaces, but instead drawing it together.
So quickly, what is generative AI? What is that?
So
Because that's a word what's been thrown out a few times. What does that even mean?
So generative AI is just that, it's generating.
Okay.
So it's creating something from things that already exist.
Okay.
So when
Simon,
you write something into ChatGPT
Yeah.
and it gives back a whole answer, it's taking a large language model of masses and masses of data to give you back your answer. So it's
okay, got you.
generating that from
Understood.
previous stuff.
When you were talking about AI, I'm all about communication. You got really passionate talking about it. Like, this is the future. This is like, it's making an impact already. It's changing. Why are you so passionate about this? So I have a couple of questions. Firstly, why are you so passionate? Because I can see your body language change. Secondly, like, how do we know? Not how do we know, because it's kind of coming back to your question. Actually, just start with that. Yeah, why are you so passionate about it?
I think what it comes down to is what we're trying to help schools achieve, which is they've got limited budgets and there's a whole lot of work they're doing. And Laura's example was one of those, and then the communication when the child is in school is another, which is taking time and it's taking effort and it's distracting from the budget going towards actually educating
Got you.
children. So, you know, what we see is the power of all of this just to make things so simple and so streamlined so that more money goes towards, you know, teachers, for example, and actually what teachers are doing, more of their time goes towards teaching children, because AI is, you know, helping the teachers to, I don't know, design assignments, do the grading of those, you know, then work out what each individual child has done on it, so therefore what do they need to work on as the next steps, for example. It's all sort of admin type stuff that the teacher's doing, which is taken away from spending time with children. So.
And the challenges we have today are not going away, right? It's not like we've got a new government, in another 2 years' time, all these teacher retention, workload, all of that, it's not going to go away. So unless we embrace some new tech and some new ways of working into the profession, we're going to continue to fight the same challenges. And I think what's really important is that it's not about removing the human interaction and the human element of teaching, right? That is so emotional. The fact that you can pick up from the child who's come in and you then know their behaviour's all completely changed. We can't necessarily get that from, you probably could in the future, but today you can't necessarily get that from a kind of AI or robot. But we want to give teachers the ability to have more of that intervention, more of that emotional kind of empathetic side. I also think it will completely change the roles that people do. So less time spent analysing data to figure out the trend, more time spent making the decision and enforcing the change. So today, to get the kind of trends that Emma was talking about of
fascinating.
How you know, several months worth of data, right? Several weeks worth of analysis, several hours worth of triggering whether I've got enough data, do I add extra points in? Actually, I'll be surfaced with that as a head or a CEO or a CFO, and then the skill set is far more rewarding because now I'm making a decision and then I can see the influence that decision makes quite quickly.
Simon, how dangerous is it? Obviously, you know, you run a business, you know, you're managing director of Access Education, but put yourself in the shoes of like a CEO of a trust or a head teacher. We don't need that because this is how we've always done it. How bad is that kind of mentality or mindset with where the world is going? Is it bad? Because it is quite a closed mindset. We're in the assembly saying you need to open your mind, have a growth mindset. But no, we can't touch AI. This is how we've always done it, so this is how we're always going to do it. So what is your opinion on that statement?
Well, the first thing is we see the breadth of views. So some of the maths we work on are very forward thinking, and we're working closely with them, and they're inputting to the feedback loop we talked about in terms of what we can do with AI, but also just with our products non-AI related. To the other end, where you may have come across maths and organisations which are at that end. I think it's just a lost opportunity because they're not forward thinking about that. All of these organisations face the same challenges, which comes back to budget. It's limited budget, really budget constrained, and it's a lost opportunity to really think about how they can put more resources into education.
I would say as well on that one, I actually think at CEO level, that doesn't tend to be the way that they think. I don't even think you go just slightly to the CEO's team. I think they are much more willing and happy to and look towards doing things better. I think the challenge they have is that sometimes at the chalk face, and that's because you are dealing with people who are already overworked, overstretched, and you're asking them to learn a new product or learn a new skill, and it's no surprise 40% of teachers, so classroom-facing teachers, haven't done anything with AI at all in any way, shape or form in last academic year, 40%. But if you speak to operational staff in schools, they're actually much more willing to be open to it, and I think it's a capacity thing. I think it is the people who are teaching 6 lessons a day versus people who have more capacity to think and see the kind of benefits.
It's also whether it works first time for you, isn't it? So whenever you pick up a new piece of, you pick up a new laptop, if it doesn't switch on, it doesn't work, you just drop it, you don't touch it again, and you go, I'll go back to the old way of doing things. So, and it's a similar thing with AI right now. If they're not actually sure how to use it, and they're not actually sure what the use case is, they touch it, they think, I still don't really know, and then you don't come back to it.
That's a great point.
So it is our jobs to help influence that, I think.
And I think there are legitimate but real concerns, out in education. I'm sure anyone in education watching this podcast will have read articles about, the threat of AI. So, first one being, will it actually mean that teachers will be out of a job because people will just be learning from computers? I'm actually old enough to remember when schools started to adopt computers for the first time. And I remember really clearly watching a video. We went in class and we watched, I don't know, video, we even had videos, but we watched a film that was about the fact that computers were going to come in, they're going to change the world, and actually everyone would just be able to work a 3-day week. And that was the vision. And of course, did that happen? We just found different ways to work, given what technology could take, what technology could take away from us. But we really don't think that's going to happen. We think it will allow teachers to actually focus on the human side of teaching.
And getting better as teachers.
Yeah.
I just want to take a quick moment to thank one of our school podcast sponsors, Access Education. The guys at Access Education are on a mission to give every school the freedom to put education first. And they do this by bringing all your software needs into one place. Whether it is financial management, HR, payroll, parent communication, or classroom content and assessments, they have you covered. They work with over 9,000 maintained schools, academies, MATs, and independent schools across the UK. On another note, I've personally worked with Access Education for a number of years. The team, the work they're doing is unbelievable. So hit all the links in the bio, check them out, and let's get back to this podcast. Quickly, you were a teacher, right? How does it feel when you are overworked, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're massively under pressure, and a school is trying to implement a new way of thinking or a new software or system or just a new approach?
Well, it's hard. Listen, it's hard in any industry, but I think if you look at teaching alongside the likes of healthcare, etc., it's the same. It's that sense of, when I was teaching, the biggest burden would be the fact that I would be a full-time teacher. So my actual job on a day-to-day basis is being in front of those students and helping them to get to where they need to get to. That is really the main thing I need to do. And that's ultimately what I'm held accountable for. So when usually at the beginning of a year, some new initiatives being introduced or some new products being introduced, exactly like Laura said, if you don't see an immediate positive either response or impact or experience with that, it's really hard to get on board. And you can chug on because there are some products that we all have to use as teachers. It's just part of, you know, the rules of teaching. But anything above and beyond that, it can be really hard to absorb that into your time, because what do? Spend an extra 20 minutes in your own time at home learning the product? Or do you put some CPD time aside and that's when you all get your head around it? So that balance it just is hard. And I think, you know, it's what we try really hard to do is to make things as intuitive as possible, as easy to use as possible, to set up really good customer services, all of those things. But ultimately, we need to just take the classroom teachers who make up the bulk of people with us on the journey and help them to sort of see the impact.
2 points. One, going back to the danger of not doing anything, I suppose. Organisations like ourselves are now really embracing this sort of tech. Actually, if our workforce doesn't come out of school and education ready to embrace AI, we're going to have some workforce challenges as they come out. It's really important that actually throughout, you know, not just the use of it in education, but our educators are teaching the morally ethical ways of using AI. And again, you can't do that unless you really understand all the kind of the good, the bad, the ugly I talked about earlier. And because you've not been embracing the tech development of it, embracing is the wrong word, sorry, but because you've not been using it throughout the organisation's schools trusts, you're not aware of that. So you need to pick really good partners that can tell you that and can consult you on that too. But we really need it to be the heart of education. Otherwise, we're going to have a set of children and the new workforce that comes out that really is left behind and not ready.
Can I just, so this is an area I'm quite passionate about. So I was an English teacher. That was my main subject. And actually, generative AI is only as good as what you put into it. So young people having the literacy and the oracy skills to be able to articulate what they want it to generate is absolutely fundamentally key. You know, already in the workforce, we're seeing big companies ask for competency in using ChatGPT, for example. So it's offering a real opportunity to re-engage some of those learners who maybe are disengaged with literacy or disengaged with, you know, education as a whole, to really rethink the benefits and the way that they use their language and their oracy skills.
So obviously, making it a little bit more difficult, are we not just creating a lazy workforce in the future?
That is one of the fears with AI, though. It will, I suppose, remove the importance of critical thinking, learning how to think critically. So I think of my own children, they can go, if they've got a question in their homework, which is evaluate, you know, this source against that source or whatever, they can go and actually get the answer, which is giving them the opinion they should be learning how to create for themselves based on, you know, a set of facts or set of data. And that's a real risk. You know, when we use ChatGPT, it can write your essay for you.
But then
so
that should sit in the curriculum, shouldn't
well,
it?
yes, no, exactly. So, you know, providing learning management system, a you know, learning tool, we need to make sure that the AI we do actually helps foster critical thinking, rather than actually just replace.
You also said ethical earlier as well, didn't you? It's all about using it for the greater good as well.
We need to make sure all the safeguarding kind of pieces are all in place as well throughout the schools and throughout children's kind of use just in when they're outside of school as well. So yeah, it's super important, and there are dangers to it, and that's why I say we don't all know exactly what they are just yet either. Actually,
one thing which is one thing which is a fear which is raised as well is the issue around data security. So it's both complying with data laws and data protection, but also the fact that, you know, generative AI will take the data in a school and then sort of, you know, use external to then, you know, generate insights, for example. But that is using pretty fundamental data. So Emma's example earlier of, you know, from a child from their early years and predicting some outcomes and predicting ways to avoid those outcomes is a huge amount of data being used there by technology on particular individual children, and the same might be teacher data and so on. And so security is absolutely key. And it's one of the things actually we as Access focus very heavily on. It's one of the key 3 planks of our artificial intelligence strategy. Because that's so important, and that's only going to become more apparent and more obvious to the wider world, that security risks of AI.
But then I think, so it's really, that's an interesting case, because I agree with you, and that's why it should come through big technology companies who really have that security at the core of what they do. But then forever in education, Fisher Family Trust data, Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4 data, Progress 8, all of that is based on children who have come before, saying, well, a child in this postcode who attends school this much and does this should be getting this GCSE result.
Yes, but I suppose that's not identifiable to a particular child.
No, it's
whereas
not. No.
AI is, the personalised learning or the personalised outcomes and so on is.
I've got a really great question. This is a brilliant chat, but what steps can schools take today to start preparing for the AI-driven future of education? What steps can they take?
I think one thing, we've touched on a number of things. One thing is to focus on the technology, the software that they have to make sure it's modern, scalable. We talk about cloud software, which means, people are familiar with Google and Microsoft now, a lot of the software is not actually in the school, on premises in the school. I think that's really important because we as software developers, we have cloud software, we can be constantly evolving that and innovating it in a way that makes it really easy to roll that out to schools. Whereas sort of older software products, they're on premise, they're in the school. It's harder for them to kind of keep with the progress because their software providers are harder to keep, find it harder to keep with that progress. So it's sort of a digital strategy, trying to digitize, as Laura said, first, if they're not fully digital in what they're doing, is absolutely key. But I think the other thing Laura touched on is having actually teaching digital skills to their students. So they can have great products and the teachers can have great products with artificial intelligence, but if they're not building those digital skills in those students, they're not going to get the most out of it. So.
I kind of come at it from 3 steps really.
So I'm a school, it all makes sense, it all sounds beautiful what you're saying. I've got this school, it's all outdated, I know it is, I'm overworked, but I've got a bit of money, but where do I even begin? What's the step in, what's the process?
Well, the first, so you need to sit down, and whilst Simon, I'm going to say exactly the same thing, but in completely the opposite way around, right? So you start and you say, what are my problems in this school?
Remember, he's the boss, man.
I know,
right?
sorry.
Be careful what you're saying.
He's all right with us. But you start with what are my problems. So take a look at the things like, what's my retention rate? How many recruitment gaps have I got? What are my attainment results looking like? What's my student absence rate? Start with where are the headaches? Where are the things that are causing me problems? And then map what is the journey that I currently take as a school to get those problems solved. So how do I currently do it? Do I have paper-based in the processes, in the decision making? Is it heavily reliant on one individual who, therefore, if that one individual leaves, I have a challenge? And just map it literally from top to bottom. And we actually do this a lot when we work with schools in our HR platform area, because that's a key area we can get those improvements. Map the process flow from top to bottom. And then start to ask yourselves in a consultative workshop type of environment, how could technology help me to solve and make more efficient these processes? We can obviously help. There's loads of people in the market that can help do that too, right? Once you get to the bottom, you can then start to say, as I put all that together, I get digital transformation, and what might I need to go to market to look for? Whereas far too often, people get to market in the form of a procurement or a tender with the answer before they've worked out what they're trying to actually solve, and they end up buying bits of tech, and you end up with 25 pieces, and then when budgets need to get cut, what's the first things that go is those 25 bits of software, which you didn't need because you shouldn't have bought them anyway in the first place.
And I would say it's also, so the big ask of all of that wraps around all of that is put the time aside. So whether that's as a senior leadership team in an individual school, whether it's as part of the CEO team, whether it's even at department level, and say, we just need to invest some time to do this activity, to think about where we are, what's our issues, what do we want to work through, how might technology help us? Because I think that is an investment up front of time that you might feel you don't have, but the alternative is you grapple. So you oh my goodness, we desperately need this, or actually, do you know what, our budget software isn't working for us, and you end up just going to market for one thing rather than really mapping out the whole transformation and saving much more money and more time in the long run by doing it right at the beginning.
So I don't want to do a massive sales pitch for Access Education, but what it sounds like to me is you don't just, if you have a new school come to you, you're not just trying to sell the most expensive product, and you're actually sitting down consulting with them, what do you actually need, and then you look at what you've got and actually what you can do to help them streamline the process, put systems in place and embed AI into school to ultimately, it drips down to then the students to provide better outcomes.
Yeah, look, if we're not the software that you need, we'll tell you that we're not the software that you need, right? That's the place that we start, really, is find us the stakeholders, and then we'll help you actually get to those answers. We'll help you map that through, and then we'll help you create the business case to do it. But aside from that, you know where the problems are within your organisation. You know where your challenges are within the trust or school. Just talk to anybody, consultants externally, and kind of just start to think about where technology can help you, rather than jump to, and I know I'm a bit of a bore, but don't jump to AI and is the answer every single time. Sometimes it's little things like the schools don't collaborate enough and we just need a collaboration tool, or we haven't got anywhere to share documents.
But just don't avoid it. Is that kind of what you're saying? Just don't avoid it at all costs. Question to you, Simon. What global trends in AI do you think will have the biggest impact on schools in the next decade? Obviously, we can't predict it.
Well,
we know.
So I was going to take you all the way back to the first answer, which I think Laura gave, which is...
Because I think it's just about understanding with schools, but then also seeing the bigger picture. Because my worry is, it all sounds great again, but it's also easy to avoid. But understanding the bigger picture, then it drips back down to where we currently are now.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the bigger picture is there is a huge amount of investment going into AI. So we have a partnership with Microsoft, and we're big users of Microsoft's AI capabilities. So we're working closely with them, and the pace of change there is great and fast. And I would imagine even the people at Microsoft, their vision is like 2 years out, not quite sure where things are going to go. And then we take their capabilities and we put them into our software. So as those improve, which they are rapidly, it has an impact on what we can do to achieve, I suppose, efficiencies for our customers in AI. So it's all moving very rapidly. So I think that really comes back to the point that we want our school customers, and we think people in education should try as much as they can to stay on top of what's happening, but also be guided by us. We're technology experts, we're taking AI, we're constantly thinking and engaging with schools about how we can use that technology to deliver value for them. So I know that's not really answering the question, but there are some big themes in AI. 10 years is a very long time in this, because I think in sort of, whilst Emma said AI, quite rightly, it's been around for decades, actually, until ChatGPT was launched, which seems quite a long time ago, but it was probably less than 2 years ago to the wider market, really awakened in everyone's mind what AI could do. It's all very recent.
So what is Access Evo? What's that?
Go on,
Okay, so Access Evo is very much our wraparound. So AI is a part of that, but it's also around us providing a space where products can be aligned and stop being disparate and start to have commonalities. It's an area that will provide this sort of almost all-encompassing wraps around all of the elements and the areas of your school, so that if you are head of department, for example, you have a ski trip going out, so you've got a budget for that, but you're also teaching PE and setting the curriculum. You're having to put in requests for extra footballs. It allows you to do all those extra bits. You're busy recruiting for a new member of the team. Evo will give you access to data across multiple platforms and products and support you in pulling things together, but it will also keep you well informed as to different changes in the products that you work within and work with.
Really the next generation of our software, which is then baking in all of that AI capabilities into it. I will make 2 points though with it, and back to your question you asked Simon before over where's the next 10 years. One of the things I say to customers all the time is, I want you to dream big, but I also want you to recognize where the industry is right now. I mean, we're working in like fortnightly sprints, and almost on a fortnightly basis there's new ideas, there's new things that can come up, and we learn the new use of this technology. We want our customers, we want our schools, we want our trusts to dream really big and tell us what it is that you need, so that we can be innovative in the background to get you there. But recognize today we're not like fully there. Like everything is completely developing, and over the next 1-2 weeks, 2 years, we're going to find that it's dramatically different. And then the second point on the Evo kind of piece is that recognize you're going to be on a journey with whoever it is you work with in the marketplace at the moment with AI, because nobody has the answer to everything. There is no perfect solution you can go grab off a shelf. It's finding a partner that has got the resources, has got the innovation, has got the investment to be able to continue the journey with AI and take your feedback on and kind of make sure that we bake that into our product development, because it is a bit unknown and there are things that are developed today. Dream big, tell us where you need it to get it, and come on the journey with us. And that's the big thing about Evo. It launches and it gives AI capabilities to all of our customers, but it's certainly not finished. It's only just started.
It will never be finished though, because AI will become a fundamental part of software. You know, our products will have more and more AI in them, but it will continue to evolve.
So go on, no, you go.
No, I would just to add to that, I think going back to what we said about recognising patterns, but in a safe and secure space, that's what Evo will allow us to do, because it will recognise patterns across different spaces in the school, in the trust, in the areas, operational versus classroom versus attendance, all of that kind of stuff. And I am going to take a punt and give a statement as to where I think AI will lead to in education.
Go on. Clip this up. Get the clip.
So I think fundamentally it should hopefully lead to a more equitable landscape in education. And I think on an individual child basis, it will hopefully lead to a child that wants to learn, but maybe for whatever reason is having a difficult time in school, might have lots of supply teachers, being able to access more personalised learning. But I also think it will support the most vulnerable in our society, because things will be flagged quicker and easier. And going back to Laura's point, we will have a much more equitable landscape if teachers have the capacity to do the human stuff, to recognise and react and respond in the more human element way, because AI is picking up a lot of the stuff and feeding the information to them to then allow them to do their job. So I think fundamentally and internationally, of course, it will lead to a more equitable system.
That just made me think actually in terms of making learning more fun. I've been reading recently about combining AI with either virtual reality or augmented reality to really enhance the education. It was talking about, you know, going on a virtual field trip where you get the benefits of actually going to see something, but it's, you know, it's not feasible for the school to take the children on that field trip, but they're getting the experience of it, you know, with kind of much less resource required to do that. But it really got me thinking about how, the more you make education fun in that respect, the more people are going to learn. But it's so exciting when you think of, you know, how that could develop in time.
And it builds cultural capital for those students who don't have access to that.
Listen, we've all worked with those children that, you know, that the classroom is not the place where it's going to be good for them to learn. And today there is very little opportunity to be able to kind of personalise that for them and take them out of that environment, which is not healthy for them. Tomorrow, I think we will see that completely change with this.
That's amazing.
You're looking very thoughtful there.
I was thrown off. I had my next questions, but then when you said about going on like a field trip,
that was just one example.
No, I know, but then my next question is, it's still not the real thing, is it?
No. It's not. But if you couldn't get the real thing, I know exactly.
Yeah.
If you couldn't get the real thing because you're in the wrong part of the country or wrong part of the world,
but then you could experience a lot more because of it.
And it's not just field trips. You know, you think of the capability of that with art and with music and with, you know, I suppose history.
100%,
or history, I mean, we can't all go back in time, and exactly. gives you that visual. I think there's a lot of opportunity. You think about, you know, schools that are struggling with their estate and maybe they don't have enough science labs, but being able to do stuff that, you know, recreate science experiments so that the students can feel like they're experiencing it and visually experience it without having to have the setup in their actual school.
Can I ask Emma a question?
Sorry. How dare you on my podcast?
Do you think we'll ever get AI on the
I'm going home.
Oh yes, for sure.
On the curriculum?
Think on the curriculum, yeah. So I think, I mean, I know obviously we've got a new government and there's a lot, I honestly believe once there is reform to the GCSEs and curriculum, I think digital skills, of which obviously AI is a part of, and digital literacy will become an absolute must on the curriculum, because I think, and it leans into the other skills. I mean, going back to that oracy and literacy and all of that, I absolutely think if we want to set young people up for the future and for the workforce and for a digital workforce, then they have to be doing it at school.
It's really interesting. I mean,
that's a really good question, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, it just came to my mind and I was like, oh, we should ask Emma this. But it is interesting because we're so driven by what our exam boards set. at the moment as to what then ends up in the curriculum, that you do have that kind of model where we know we sort of need it for the workforce, but we're not necessarily teaching it. But the examples are actually, in a lot of cases now, detecting ways of finding where a chatbot or a chat GPT has been used in essays. And actually, you kind of think we need that transformation right at that top level. But yeah, I mean, we are going to have to teach it. You're seeing in the NHS doctors now actually perform surgery using artificial intelligence. Google, yeah, exactly.
Google, have you ever been in the GP and they type in it on Google? I'm thinking, surely you should know. Why are you asking? I did that at home. I've got a sore throat and I'm dying.
Than that, but yeah.
Why are you asking Google?
but it's true. Like, we are going to need to teach it, I think, and that's why I was interested.
Absolutely, and I actually think the skills.
Simon's experienced that clearly.
Yeah, when they look on the images, yeah, your thing looks a bit like that on Google. So
you've got this. Come back in 3 weeks.
So when Simon was saying about his own children, just the ability to lose that critical thinking because they'll just go, oh well, that knows better than me. Yeah. It's also about creating confidence in young people. So, and I actually think this is the workforce as well. It's not just young people, but if you use ChatGPT to produce an email, let's say to your boss, you should still check that and you should still make sure it aligns to what you want it to be and have those editing skills. Whereas it'd be easy to go, oh well, it knows best, so I'll just do that.
What you do need to do is change the font. So when Emma sends me an email, I know she's done it for ChatGPT because it's a different font. So you didn't know I knew that.
There's leg room in that. See, Dave? See, I said that earlier in the car. Is there a case of even the government, Ofsted, getting on board with AI? So if a school's got all these certain systems in place, okay, Ofsted can come in and then focus on what they need to focus on, but they can check that all these boxes are being ticked. Is there a case for AI in Ofsted?
Well, I think to a certain extent, then the school will be able to present its information and its plans and things if it's using AI capabilities to help it do that in a more compelling way. So the outcome is going to be better, more presentable. Whether that means Ofsted's checking off that they're using AI. It's just,
but it's really interesting because if actually you were using Ofsted, but you were using AI in Ofsted. So when Ofsted turn up to a school, like everything goes, they're here, everything changes, right? I don't care what any school says. Like it completely changes the dynamic of everything. How dare you say that? If you were not always for the better, right? Which is the problem with it. So, but if you're actually using the analysis, the data, the trends. Over a 12-month period, a 6-month period, you're getting a much better reflection of that school's performance than on the week that Ofsted turns up. And that's where it could be really, really valuable.
Yeah, so both on the Ofsted side, but also on the school side.
Yeah. I mean,
having a better improvement plan, for example.
A good school will do a really good, self-reflection plan, and they will know their own, where their areas of weakness are. But I think sometimes within that could be, that takes head teachers weeks, and it's an ongoing process. It's like a strategy document. It doesn't end, it just keeps evolving. And actually, if they were able to draw some points of data together, so all they have to do is add their expertise onto the top of that, that would be really beneficial to them, because then it leaves them the time to go, right, okay, what's next and how do we plan further ahead, rather than spending hours and hours and hours crunching spreadsheets.
Yeah, because there are software products out in the market that it's basically self-assessment. So the school, and there'd be like 400 questions in advance of the Ofsted, but the school's assessing itself. If that's all driven by data, it's inaccurate.
There's the analogy that, if you're a cleaner, your house is a mess. If you're a builder, there's building work to be done in your house. You guys work in AI every single day. Is your life like systemized to the T, or is it an absolute mess? Simon's got paperwork everywhere. He's got his pencil. He's writing on his wall. How do you manage AI in your own personal life? So remove access education, just in general. Do you guys implement AI into your personal life at the moment, or is it just a work thing?
Personal life.
That's a good question.
Not so much, although I have actually recently used it to write a letter to my council.
do you know what? We're in exactly the same, like as actual users, right? So it was really interesting because I was sat downstairs where my account management team sits, and they're typically a little bit younger than me. And I was trying to do something last week and trying to get it to fit 300 words. So I'd written this whole statement paragraph, and it was in about 500 words. And I was staring at it thinking, it's going to take me hours to get this from 500 to 300. And the team just went, just put it into ChatGPT and tell it to rewrite it in 300 words. I was like, I can't do that. I'm a fraud. Like, I'll be like cheating. And then I did it. I was like, why on earth have I spent half an hour looking at this? Like, it's crazy. So we're in the same place as all schools and trusts in that we feel
So
slightly...
you're telling Simon that your job's not that?
Yeah.
Is that what's going on?
But I was having this conversation about 10 minutes before we started this with our colleague Amy, who was saying she uses ChatGPT to develop some marketing material or something and then feels embarrassed and like it's kind of cheating, I shouldn't really say it. But it's actually a fundamental way of doing the job.
Why do people feel cheated using it though?
Because we've never educated that it was okay.
Because you
either.
sort of think it's your job should be creating that stuff.
So is it like
you
a
an hour.
psychological...
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
See, I find that really interesting because the very best teachers I've ever met are just magpies. They are just constantly going around taking the best.
from
So some of it
places.
might come off tests, some of it might come off a membership organisation they're in, some of it comes off a colleague, and they're just amalgamating and taking the best and actively avoiding recreating from scratch, because you can't go into every lesson and recreate from scratch. I mean, some people do, but it's madness because great stuff's out there. So actually, I am very happy and open to use it all the time because I think it makes me more efficient, but also I'm happy just to be a magpie.
And
And
nobody
and steal
truly
it
cares,
stuff.
do they? If you
No,
created
of
it
course
yourself
not.
or
No,
whether...
absolutely not.
Like,
No.
sometimes, people, interesting. So I'm going to wrap this up, but with a complete different question. So, now it's off, but if you've watched my... If you could sit down, complete different question, if you could sit down with any famous person or non-famous person, dead or alive, one person for an hour, who would you sit down with?
Oh, wow.
Anyone, dead or... It doesn't have to be famous, could be your nan, could be... I don't know, anyone. I'm going to start with Simon.
Oh, no, don't go with me first.
Oh no.
Anyone, somebody who's inspired you, somebody who you're fascinated. It could be literally anyone.
I'm going to say this is not necessarily top of my list, but it was the first one that came to mind given our conversation was
Cameron Parker. You've done it
Tim
today.
Berners-Lee, who you could sit down with because he's alive, who effectively invented the internet. I'd really love to understand the vision back then, was 25 years ago, 30 years ago maybe, of what that could become. And how, whether there was vision that it was going to transform human life, basically, in the way that the internet has. I think that'd be a really interesting conversation.
Quickly, obviously you're not at the start of your journey, but with how fast everything's moving, does it feel like you're at the start of your journey? Do you feel like excited about we're doing something here? That's for you.
Well, completely. I mean, through my experience of technology, all the time, new technologies come to the fore. Which then allows us to completely change how we're doing things. And it goes back to my thing when I was at school and we had the first school computers. Of people watching this might remember BBC computers rolled out into schools. They couldn't do very much, and the coding lesson was kind of line 01, go to line 02, and but the use of that technology was so exciting of what it could do, and then that became standard, and new technologies coming out all the time. So I think we're always one way to answer that question is I feel we're always at the beginning. With AI, we're right at the beginning, but once we're all using AI, other things will come along as well.
That's amazing. But it also sounds like you're never going to retire. Anyway, who would you sit down with?
So mine would be Mrs. Gilman. So Mrs. Gilman was my English teacher in secondary school, and she absolutely inspired me in terms of, we were sitting in a pretty shoddy classroom in a state school in the middle of Newcastle that didn't have high hopes for anyone. And she made Curly's wife come to life. She really drove a feminist lens on everything that we did. And she absolutely inspired me both to continue studying English, but then it was her influence that made me then want to go into the classroom and have the same impact on young people that she'd had on me.
That's amazing. Do you feel like you've achieved that impact?
Yeah, well, I think I did at one point, certainly. I mean, I'm not in the classroom anymore, but yes, definitely. I mean, there's no higher than GCSE results day when a child you're not expecting or is on the edge comes out with a pass, and you know that every door is suddenly open to them in a way that it wasn't the day before. And I think that's what keeps people teaching. I mean, it's all of that keeps people teaching. But I think, and I would have loved to have told her, and I wrote her a postcard once and then just never sent it, and then she died. I know, it's a really sad story. But yeah, so she would be mine.
So send your postcards.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so difficult. And since
You've
you
had
asked
more
the
time to
question-
prepare than
I
I have.
know. I was literally like,
That
where am I
probably
going to
makes it harder.
go?
That
Where am
makes
I
it
going to
harder.
go? Yeah. Gosh, right. So I think, well, there was two people. One, I'll go slightly businessy, and then I'll go, I know it was one, but I couldn't. The first one was Satya Nadella. And the reason why I say Satya Nadella is because alive still, gone through a lot of this transformation within the business, seen the tech be implemented, learned a lot of the lessons. This is from CEO of Microsoft. Learned a lot of the lessons, and I think also really embraced like that growth mindset to not have it be seen as something that could end up being a real challenge to business. He's been able to really embrace it. The second one is linked to the whole growth mindset thing, and it would, and this is where I couldn't quite get to it, but I think I'd sit down with Simone Biles and ask her how she keeps, through all of that kind of Olympic success, how she keeps that mindset quite so clear and so focused as well in the face of a lot of challenge sometimes. And I think that can be related back to tech and how that evolves.
Amazing.
So sorry, it wasn't one. It was two.
It was good. It was a good question.
Does anybody ask you that question?
No, they don't actually.
No.
Thanks, Simon. Who would I sit down with? To be fair, I would do really basic, and it would be my grandmother, my nan. She pretty much looked after me from the age of 11 to 15, well 16 before she died. So I'd love to sit down with her and just go over past memories and to see if certain things I thought was real or not, or certain, just sit down and have one more hug, I guess. Yeah. And it sounds a bit deep, but if it was probably business or sport, I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I don't want to do, the typical like Muhammad Ali or.
They'd be fascinating.
They would be really fascinating, but I think there's someone like Jesus.
Go big.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Go big.
But anyway,
on that note,
let's wrap this podcast up. But I imagine, are you all on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah,
I'll be tagging you all later. You can find everyone on LinkedIn. This was a really enjoyable episode for me. I'll be honest, driving here today, I was worried about it because, as I said, I've never interviewed 3 people at once, but you guys have saved this podcast, so thank you. But I really do appreciate it, and I feel like you've taught me a lot, and I also know people listening or watching this at home, they're going to take a huge amount away, especially knowing where AI might go, especially not to avoid it, but also to kind of strategize and start to implement some small things moving forward. So a massive thank you, guys.
No, thank you
Very much.
That's another episode of the School Podcast. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.